Okay, I think we can start. Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. And so the plan for today is that we'll start with the check of the activity which was your home task. Then next one would be that we will quickly again go through the key points that we had in the presentation about the basics of C#. Then we will have a short overview of the arrays, and then you will do the activity 2. So you'll have the time today, and then we will check it together on Wednesday then. Remember, this week we have a long week, so it means that we also have a session on Saturday. I know that this is the working day, so for those of you who can join, I hope that majority will join. So maybe I will maybe I will ask them in chat after the session, and then you can vote thumbs up or thumb down if you can or cannot join Saturday. If the majority cannot join, then we will need to think about maybe we can reschedule it or the next Saturday, or let's see, most likely then reschedule, but yeah, so let's see, I will ask this question after the session in chat, and then please vote. Okay, so yeah, and this is about this week. So then let's start, and most likely you have the notes check next Monday, so I will announce it on Wednesday. So yeah, let's start first regarding the activity 2. I checked what was submitted by you. I checked it yesterday, so maybe there are some of you who pushed the changes maybe today, so I can maybe share this this table in Discord, and if I missed any of you, so if you pushed the changes in your remote repository to your remote repository, but the changes are not, I mean, I didn't, if I haven't checked them, then please let me know, then I can check it later. Yes, so then
I pushed this activities yesterday late in the evening.
Okay, yeah, then I will check you. So I'll mark you down. So then anyone else? Okay, then maybe let me know later if you did it. Okay, and then thanks, Anna. I will check it. Okay, so then let's move to the solution. Yeah. So we had two theories, and first of all, sorry, there was I haven't noticed one thing. So yeah, the first part, when you had to create the project, I hope that was clear for everyone. And so just simply create new project and create as the class library. So why didn't we create it as console application? Because in this case, we do not want this particular class to be executed. We just created it as the. Sorry, there is still sound coming from. Sorry, Irina, is it you? Yeah, thank you. Just a little bit noisy. Yeah, so basically the idea was that we just simply have the class library that we do not want to execute, and then we can use it simply as the class library, not execution. So yeah, then we created this project. That was pretty much clear. And then the second part is the unit testing. And for the unit testing, you had to create a new project under the same solution. So basically, it means that one project will see the files, the classes, and so on from the other project located in the same solution. Yeah. So they are all available for each other. And yeah, so then the issue could be at this point where you had to select the unit test project, and starting the recent versions of Visual Studio. I haven't noticed this, but there's different name of the unit test. So basically, there are two types of project for unit tests, and the old one was it is meant for the .NET framework. Yeah, so remember the framework which was used before last year, and before .NET, which unifies the .NET framework and .NET Core in one. So that was this is meant for the .NET framework, and for .NET Core, yeah, which is basically used by us, and .NET, it is MS test project. So you had to then use this one. I wrote it in chat yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. So I hope that you managed to solve this issue after that. So yeah, and once you select this, you can now create the unit test project, and then you have to add the reference to activity1 project. Yeah, I can do it from here. Go to project, add project reference, then select the project to which you want to refer to, and that's it. Then you have to, basically for all the projects, you can add the existing class. You can just right click and type and select add existing item, or you can also simply drag and drop. And let me present it to you. And let me open the files. So here we are. I can simply drag and drop, and not so much. Simply drag and drop and paste it here. Then that would be the same. So yeah, and after that, now you have all the necessary classes. So is it now clear with the setup? So I hope that no one else. So is anyone else having the issues with the setup? Let me know then. Okay, so sounds good. Looks that everyone managed to do it. In case you have any troubles, please let me know then. So yeah, and once everything is set up, oh yeah, so by the way, I guess today is the, yeah, so I guess today is the launch event of Visual Studio 2022, or 2022. So I guess you can download this version soon. So if you want, you can download and check new features available there. Maybe I will not update for now, but let's see. See, if you want, you can update. Okay, and yeah, so then let's move to the solution. solution was not complicated. Yeah, by the way, I also suggested that as I mentioned last time, you also had to adjust the test class for activity 1 all little bit, since I mean what's the so I have not explained you what the unit tests basically mean and why can we use it. But yeah, I hope for you it's already pretty much clear what we want to achieve with the unit test classes. The idea is that they are needed, so basically we can check the results of the programs we write. Yeah, also that's I mean the best usage of them, I would say, is for the practicing, for the studying activities. On practice, there may be needed in some developments, but it depends. But let's say that your program uses some kind of calculations, or for example, you have the database, then you need to put some entries into the database, then you already, before you run the program, you can prepare some test examples, test results, and then compare if your program satisfies these results. So this is possible, and yeah, so basically from here it means that unit test classes are not meant to be executed as a part of the solution, as part of the program as the solution. So we do not execute them for the usage, I mean for the practical usage of the program. Yeah, so it doesn't mean that this class can be used in the solution for these classes. The main purpose of them is to run the tests using them. Yeah, so for example, yeah, so they are marked as test class and test methods. And at the end, the idea is that when you run the tests, I can maybe run it right now, then it so it basically checks all the tests we had here. Yeah, yes, everything is passed. Yeah. So everything is passed, and basically idea is that it executes all the test methods. Okay? It executes all the tests methods we have here from this particular test class. So yeah, all these test methods are executed. They have no return type. So, but what do they have? They have this assertion class. Yeah, assertion class. This is the special class, as you can see, which comes from the unit testing. And so, yeah, in programming, assertion, I would say you can find it in lots of different programming environments, in .NET, also in Java, and in many different other languages. And yeah, the main purpose of assertion, like everywhere where you see it, the main idea is that it is used for the testing purposes. It can be used in unit tests, as you can see here, and also in other solutions. It can also be included inside the real program, the program you execute, the practical program, and then it can check for some conditions. And on practice, how it usually works. On practice, there are such cases like normally we have several systems we test. We have several systems we proceed with. We have, let's say, the development system, which is used for the developers develop, to test. Then there is another system which is used only for testing, and then there is the production system. There can be some systems in between, but this is not so important. What's the key point here is? The key point here is that for different environments, the assertion can be actually turned off. So what does it means that if assertion is executed on the let's say real life program, yeah, which is used for the practical usage, then the assertion will affect nothing. Yeah, so it is basically skipped then. Comparing to the other environments, if there is a testing environment or there is the development environment, then assertion will actually be turned on. Yeah, so it means that during the development or during the testing, we can detect some additional issues we have in our program. Yeah, and so the key point for us is that so what we as the developers we try to achieve, we want to have as less mistakes as possible in the detect as less. So we want the issues to be detected as less as possible in production system, in real life system, and of course for us it's always better that we detect all the possible issues in the development or during the testing. And that's why we may use assertions in some cases, even in the real life program. But yeah, so this is a little bit different question. And so basically, how does it work? Like assertion class has different methods. So let's quickly. So are equal, are not equal, are same. I guess fail means that we just definitely fail. Yeah, so without any checking. So we can basically, as you may already understand, we can write any code as we want. And I think that I will also give you maybe sometime a practical task where you can create your own unit tests. Yeah, so that would be maybe a little bit later. Let me know. But I guess for you that would be a nice practical task if you create unit tests by yourselves. That would be quite interesting, I would say. Because again, here we have just a simple, actually quite simple unit test. Yes, we just simply compare the value and then check if it's true or false. On practice, again, there may be some different, lots of different cases of unit tests. Like you may have the flow, you may have like hundreds or thousands of checks in between. Also build some different branchings, if else, and so on. And so go different directions. And at some point, you may reach the point where which is incorrect, which should not be reached, and then you can call the method assert fail, and then it means that the unit test will fail. Yeah, so maybe I can just for testing purpose, I can call this method, and so it means that this unit test will always fail. So if I'm not mistaken. Okay, yeah. So you can see that that's it. Always fails. Yeah. So you can see the message. So the message, I guess you can also type the message here if I'm not mistaken, right? Double check. So you can see the overloading of the methods. So here I can say, so this should say always fail. And let's run. And now we see the message that this should always fail. Okay. So actually, you can also the same as in the exception classes. We'll talk about them a little bit later. You can also type the error message. You can provide the error message to the result of the unit test. So quite interesting concept. And of course, this string can be generated from the code. Yeah, with all the necessary information to be provided at the test result. And by the way, and yeah, at the end, so what we have here again, we have assert are equal and then simply compares if are equal returns false, then the unit test is failed. Otherwise, the unit test is passed. So this is in short about unit tests. Again, I will give you task code a bit later, so you can also try it yourself. Do you have any questions about unit tests? Okay, if not, then we can proceed with the solution. Yeah, so those who implemented the solution. So there are different. So yeah, let's start with activity 1.0. There are different ways how to implement it, but so the logic, the algorithm to create the solution for this code, it is quite simple. And I guess you know it from real life how to calculate the age. Yeah, so first of all, we need to subtract the current year from the birth year, and then we get the age. We may have the exception. The exception may be if the current date is less or equal than the birth date. In this case, the age should be decreased by 1, which is quite logical thing. So then I can implement this solution. I calculate the age, and then I check if the current date is the same, or if the current date is greater or the same. So then I can check if the current month is greater than if the birth month is greater than the current month, then it obviously means that we should decrease the age by 1. And as an alternative, we can have the case where the month is the current month, but the day is greater, and in this case, we should also decrement the age by 1. And so I can use this syntax. I can also use this syntax. Or in this case, that would be equivalent if I use pre-decrement. So there are no difference in this case. And then I return it. I run unit tests, and as you see that before, the unit tests are all green. Yeah. So, do you have any questions about this task? So, quite simple, just one if statement. Yeah.
Why is it necessary to use this within the class?
Yeah, actually, this is one of my, I'd say not my favorite, but one of my, I'd say not signature ways of coding, but the approach I usually try to stick to is that I use this when we are, so what's the point? Point here is that this is this is not the static method. Yeah, so it means that this class can, on practice, this class can only be used as the object. I mean, we must create the object to then be able to use this class. So we will talk, not this class, but this method. We will talk about object-oriented programming a little bit later, but the point is that for the objects, when we used instance methods, non-static methods, then we are actually located inside the object. And so we are calling these methods. So when the method is called, then we are inside the object. And to point out that we are inside the object, I prefer using this. It's just up to you to decide. If you want, you can use it. If you want, you can skip using. That won't be difference if you use it like this. Why I prefer using this? Because I want to point out that this particular variable, it belongs to the class. Where is it? Moment. Birth date. Okay, no, hold on. Where is it? Where is it defined? Hold on. So where? Do we have? Yeah. So here we have it. Yeah. So I just was a bit confused. Yeah. Here we have this method. So yeah, I want to point out that we are calling this particular getter, which comes from the current object. And so I call this method this getter. It is here, so it gets the date of birth of this player. So I just simply point out that this is the current, that it comes from the current object. Of course, again, as I said, we can skip using this and get them off. That will be the same. That will be the same. The only thing I want to point out that we can point out that this actually is not the variable which is defined somewhere inside, somewhere locally, but it is defined globally inside the class. Because again, what we may have the situation when we define the time, then we can define the variable with the same name inside something else. Let's create new data. Yeah, so we can define it, the variable with the same name inside the method. And in this case, if we don't use this, then this would be this particular variable, not the variable we are looking for. Again, in this case, that's not this case. I mean, this is not such case. So in such case, we can of course keep using. But sometimes we may have a situation when the variable inside the method may be the same as the variable. The name of the variable may be the same as the name of the variable stored globally inside the class, and in that particular case, of course, that we may accidentally use incorrect variable, not the variable we want. So yeah, that's why to not have such confusion, I always try to use this. So that's why I use it. If you want, you can skip using, but then be careful that you may accidentally use the wrong variable. And also from the, again, I usually try to write the code so it, for me, can be understandable from the reading point of view. And on practice, when you work with large programs, maybe not such like this, but with large programs, when you have multiple objects, like if it's the web programming, you may have multiple views, multiple windows, and then all the windows are defined as the objects, and so you may have the methods inside the objects, and then you may have again lots of different variables, so lots of attributes, and in such cases it is easier, at least for me, when I read the code. I see that currently I'm working with the variable or the method which are not static. That's the first point, and which is instance methods or instance attribute, which belongs directly to the object and defined globally, and it is defined globally. That's why. But again, up to you. It's not mandatory. Yeah, please note that again, this points that you are using the current object. If you are using the static method, then please remember that inside the static method, so if this is the static method, then this will not be allowed, since static methods do not use the objects. I mean, static methods are not called from the objects, they are called from the class. That's why the instance of this is not created. Yeah, but since we have instance methods, then instance method then means that the object is created. Okay, is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any more questions about this task? Okay, if not, then we can move to Zodiac. For Zodiac, there are also multiple ways how you can proceed with the solution. Again, you can use switch statement, you can use if statement, or maybe you can find something else. That's this is up to you to do. But yeah, one of the solutions would be that you use switch statement and then simply define multiple cases based on the month. Yeah. So, and as one of the solutions, that would be if you use switch statement and then check the cases, check the month. So, and then for each month, then this will be a different zodiac sign. So yeah, basically according to the rules, you can check the zodiac sign and then return the corresponding. You can see that there are the constants defined, so it means that they are fixed. And they will all have the fixed objects. Yeah. In that case, even no, so these are not the constants. These are the static attributes. But yeah, so they're all defined, and we don't need to then change it. Yeah. So in fact, we could also use the constant, but yeah, so this is up to us to decide. Okay, so do you have any questions about this particular task? And yeah, so in this task, please note that for static variables, we cannot use, first of all, we cannot, as I said, we cannot point to this instance in static methods because, again, static methods are not called from the objects. That's why they don't use this instance. Yeah, so that's, and of course also for the static variables, we don't call them from this sense, again, same as the methods, they belong to the class. But yeah, this will be more about the object-oriented programming. Yeah. So do you have any questions about this Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have regarding this particular. Due to the sound problems, I didn't hear the beginning of the lecture. So my question is regarding homeworks.
Yeah.
I sort of tried to do both of the homeworks, but I was also a little bit missing time. And basically, the end was that I had issues in both projects, so they wasn't correct. Is it worth to hand them in anyway, or how it is here? Maybe you can comment.
Uh,
Or it
that,
doesn't matter.
I mean, that would be good if you develop the solution for yourself. I will mark it as
Yeah.
that you submitted this, and at least for yourself, try to do it, and then submit the solution.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? And yeah, let's run the unit test, of course. Let's run the unit test. Let's see the result. So you can see that all the basically, let's also have a quick look on the unit test, how it looks like here. And so also basically having the same approach, just check if the corresponding result is the same. And basically, yeah, so what you can see here, that's the interesting point. Here it checks the instances. And so it has the methods from Zodiac. And so we basically, again, this unit test use this unit test class. It use this Zodiac class. Yeah. And the class from here, the methods from here, actually are used also in the unit test. Why not? And yeah, also the objects from here. Yeah, so you can see that these are all the objects. Yeah, the instant means that the instances of them are created here, and then it is then checked. The zodiac signs then checked inside this class. Yeah. So it checks if this is the console, and then the console is taken from zodiac sign, and then it is compared. The same as for others. Okay, the question from Wina. Wina tried to. It was if else, but didn't really work because the if else stopped working after the first condition. I didn't execute all the statements in that case. Which first? Sorry. Oh, moment. Was it? Yeah, it also works. I mean, it works. Yeah, I mean, you need to use if statement to then check the day, of course. Yeah, check the day. Yeah, in fact, you can also use as an option. You can also use switch inside switch. Why not? In theory, you can also do it. But yeah, so if you use if then in theory you can use if instead of case. So then you need to check if month equals 1. Then you go here. If month equal 2, then you go there, and so on. So I mean else if using else ifs, of course. But using else, so I'm not sure where did you want to use else here. How you wanted to implement it. Okay, so if month 3 and day is something, and I don't see what it is. Okay, it's month. So if months, okay. Two. Months. But how did you split these? Okay, I guess. I mean, sorry, but so what do you have in between here? in between. Here I don't see, is it and or? I assume we have or here, right? But then you need to have the else if statements then. I mean, code looks a little bit hidden. But yeah, so I definitely need to use if or else if, or yes, you can also do it as some, then just to use return every time there. In this case, there is no actual difference if you use if or else if, since you have return statement inside. So basically means that if you return something, if you have return statement inside, then it basically stops the program, and this means that there's no difference if you use if, else, or so if you use if or else if for the further statements, since the further statements will not be executed again. What may be the difference between if, like if you use ifs and if you use if plus else if, then for example, like let's say you have if, some statement inside, then you do some merging, and then you check further statements. And then in this case, like if you have if, and here you have if as well, then both these statements can be true. Yeah, so let's say that this statement is true, what is inside, and then this statement is true. And then if both statements are true, then they both will be executed. So in that case, if you have the options when one be executed after another one, then in that case, of course, you need to consider this option. But if you use else if, then it simply means that if the first one, first condition is executed, if it is true, then it will not execute else if statement. Yeah, so that's the difference. So in case when it is possible that after this statement it will go next here and check if this is true, then these both can be executed. But in our case, since we have return statement of inside each if, then it basically means that if this if statement is true, then it will finish the execution of the program inside and it will not go further. So in such case, when we have return statement inside, there is no difference if we use if or else if, since the second statement will not be executed anyway if the first one is executed. So that's why please be careful when selecting using ifs, or if, else if, and so on, because there may be difference sometimes. Okay, I see Lynn and Tallinn typing the questions. If the first, so yeah, if the first statement is true, then there is no difference. Yeah, so that is a good point. Alina, if the first statement is false, then it will trigger if and else if the same way in all the cases. Yeah. Because again, if the first statement is false, then it will always check if there are other alternatives. Yeah, and else if would be alternative, and if will also be, it will not be an alternative, it will be simply just as an additional statement. But from the executing point of view, both options will be the same if the first statement is false, since it won't be triggered. But again, sometimes you may have return statement, return exits, return break, or continue. Let's say if you are inside the loop, then using continue statement, it will always go to the next iteration, and then it will also not go further. Yeah, so please check if there is the possibility that your code will move to the next if statement, or it will be skipped. Okay. So do you have any more questions about this task? Yeah, so this is quite popular task to remember how the switch statement works, or if you want to use as an alternative, you can also use only if statements, if else statements, else if statements there. That would also be fine. So yeah, and again, shortly about the unit test. Here it checks two objects, so that's also interesting. First of all, it goes to the Zodiac class and checks the corresponding attributes of this class. Yeah, so these are static attributes. Then it means that they belong to the class, not to the object. So it means that I can access them directly from the class. Yeah, this is what I do here, and then it checks Zodiac sign. So I have this method get Zodiac sign, and then this returns. Yeah, actually you can see that it returns one of these objects. Yeah, one of these attributes. So it basically means that the attribute I access directly from Zodiac class. Yeah, so if it's cancer or whatever it is, then so here, then it means that, let's say I access cancer, I get this object. Then if I call the method, as I do here, I call the method get Zodiac sign. This is the method you implemented. So then it checks the date and returns the corresponding object. Yeah, and again, this will be one of these objects. Yeah, so basically, this method returns one of these objects. Yeah, that's why. And yeah, basically how the comparison works here. So this is also interesting point, because as remember what I told you last time, for the classes, for the objects, see here we have the object. We have the object Zodiac. Yeah, so this is the object, and remember, as I said, when we compare the objects, there is such method, not method, but such interface we need to implement. It's called comparable. Yeah, so for comparable interface, we have the methods equal. Yeah, so we can implement the method equal, greater than. Yeah, so which returns positive, means that the current object is greater than. Negative means that the current object is less than the one we compare to, and if it returns result 0, it means that the objects we compare, we rank them the same. Yeah, it is most, as I said, it's mostly used for the sorting purposes, and the sorting is really important in programming, especially when we work with the data. For those who studied with me in the previous course, you may remember that we talked about the tables, database tables, hash tables, sorted tables, and such sortation is really important, and the way how the data is stored is really important for the large data, since in programming we want to think about the optimization of the algorithms. We want to make our program work as fast as possible, and then of course the sorted data may work quite differently than may perform in a quite different way than unsorted data, and of course then for the comparable objects we can use sorting algorithms too. Not we, but we or the program, generic classes can use the sorting algorithm to then compare the objects. But in this case, you see, we don't have this interface. So, and then what's the point? How can we actually compare? In this case, you see that that the unit test class, it does not check if the value is greater or less. It just simply checks if the value is equal, and check the equality. For this case, we don't need to compare them. Actually, yeah, for example, as I said, we have some values what we can compare, like let's say the numbers, the ranks, the marks, percentages, and so on. And there are the values we cannot compare. Let's say genders. We cannot compare which gender is greater, which is smaller. We cannot compare the colors and so on. But we can actually say that, let's say these genders are the same or these colors are the same. We can't say for such in such cases, yeah, they are equal. Then it means that also for such case we don't need to. We can simply say if one object is the same as another object, and basically what happens here. Yeah, so the question from you may be, what does it actually checks? But we'll talk about it in object-oriented programming, and there you'll see that it actually just simply checks the reference number in the memory. Yeah, so remember, we talked about the reference, the variable reference variables last time. So where is it? That was, where was it? The reference variables. So generic types. Yeah. Guess that was the best example. We had, yes, when we create the object, it's actually placed in some place in the memory, and the variable defined as the reference variable, it stores it does not store the values of the objects, it stores the reference of the objects, basically the address to the memory where this object is located. And basically then what does this unit test do? It simply compares the references of both objects, yeah? And since they both are created, since they all are created here, that means that if we compare areas to areas, then the reference of them will be the same. If we create, let's say, another areas here, and then again, you see that it has the same values here. It has the same values here, but if I replace it, I guess I don't. Okay, it's not used. Sorry. Let's then select another one. Let it be wheel, for example. That means, okay, let it be wheel 1, for example, and then let's then replace this wheel with wheel 1. Remember that this method will return the same wheel as it returned before, but then it will compare it to wheel 1. So basically, what will happen? It will compare wheel to wheel 1. Yeah? And you'll see that this unit test then should fail. Yeah, you see that it fails. Yeah, it fails because it compares this wheel to wheel 1, even despite the fact that they both have the same values. But the point is that they both are different objects. So even despite the fact that the values of them are the same, they have different references. Yeah, so it means that simply they're created in different position, in different places in the memory. So of course their address location will be different, and that's why wheel 1 is not the same as wheel. If we implement comparable method and we check the comparison based on these values, then the compare method equals method will return true in this case. But since we don't have this method and we simply check the references, then they will be different. Okay, so this is it about this unit test. Do you have any questions? Okay, then maybe let's have 10 minutes break now, and so yeah, in case you have any questions, you can also prepare them during the break. So what's the meet at? So that would be 7:37. Okay. So that's the meet in 10 minutes. Okay, let's move on. Let's wait 1 more minute and continue. Okay, so I hope that it's everything clear with the assignments. So just in case you have any questions, let me know them. Okay, then let's have a short summary about the basics. Yes, since we'll use the components of them again and again in our course. So remember last time we talked about the fundamentals in C#, about the operators we use and the flow controls. Yeah, so first we'll talk about the ways of declaration of the main structure of the C# source file. How the class is defined using the import of the classes and class libraries to use. Then namespace, class itself, and the methods and the attributes we use inside. So this was the main about the declaration. Then the braces. Yeah, we define the sections of the code. Yeah, so again, we define. We do not define some kind of I would say not the executable part, but let's say some kind of executable part of the code, yeah, which we directly execute. Now we define the section which then can be used in the execution process. In addition, we can also define the arrays, the values for the arrays using them as well. So the main method, the starter method of our program and console program, and the arguments we can pass. Remember, yeah, that this is used only for the console applications, and then for the applications when the console is not involved, it's again unit tests, class libraries, then web applications, web form applications, or something similar. In such cases, then we don't need this main method, since we then use other different parts of our code then. Okay. Then statements, yeah, so the actual part that is executed, we use the methods to then, let's say, hide some code inside the class or the object, and then also, yeah, to hide it, and then also to reuse it in other parts of the code. Yeah, so, but yeah, so from the encapsulation point of view, methods are used for the hiding the code. Yeah, so basically means that we need to focus on the name of the method. So the name of the method describes what the method actually does. Yeah, so again, I guess I mentioned it last time, but if not, so that would be great even if I mentioned. This is a nice point to remind you that please, when you create the methods, every time when you create the methods, please ensure that your method only does what is defined in the name of the method. Yes, so like if you have, let's say, get something, or let's say get values, get the values from wherever it is, then please do not do some updates inside the code. I mean, do not let's say you want to get the values from the database, and then inside this method, you define a method get values, and then there are there are such cases when the developers also define the updates inside such method, define the insertions, changes, and lots of different stuff, even despite the fact that the method name is get values, or get something. Yes, so if your method says that it does thing A, so it does one thing, then please do not do the thing which is maybe the opposite one or is not related to the name of the method. So the name of the method should speak for itself. And so if you say get something, please do not do the stuff which is not related to the getting values, and which is not the opposite one. Do not set the values and set the values and so on. This is important because in practice I usually face such bad programming examples then where the developers do some unrelated stuff to the name of the method. So please be careful and try to make the name of the method speak for itself. Yeah, that's why we use the encapsulation. That's why we say hide the implementation of methods. This way, again, I don't see how the method writeLine is implemented, but I do know what does it do simply because I have this name and the name speaks for itself. Right? So be careful in such cases. The keywords, yeah, so the identifiers, the names of the methods, the variables, and basically the names we define. And they are not part of C# language. They are not keywords in the C# language, so we cannot use switch, for example, or int, or boolean, or bool, or any keyword that is reserved by C#. We must not use them. We need to use something else instead, simply because they are keywords. And then basically, again, remember, why do we use all these structures, all these namings, all these syntax? As I mentioned for you last time, and please remember that the programming is nothing else than just simply the communication between you and computer. Yes, so you all communicate so you and computer, you both can communicate in not actual computer, but the compiler. You and compiler, you both communicate in one language. Yeah, the same as here. We all communicate in English because we all know English, but some of you may know Latvian, Russian, Polish, or whatever, any other language. Yeah, but so just we have one common language in between. Yeah, and that's why we communicate in English. The same as with computer. The compiler may understand also other languages. It understands the bytecode, but it understands the assembly. But at the end, the compiler can translate what you write to it, what you write inside the code, into the machine code, into the assembly, then the bytecode, which is then executed by the computer. And this is all checked by compiler. Yeah, so this means that you communicate with compiler, and then compiler actually delivers the corresponding code to the machine to be executed. And that's why, of course, if you mix the keywords and the identifiers, then of course for the compiler this will not be clear. And of course compiler will not understand what do you want, what do you expect from it. And so that's why you may have the miscommunication between us and compiler. That's why You need to make it clear for the compiler to provide all the commands in the way that they are all understandable by it. Yeah, the literals actually the values and the variables of use. Remember that we can use VAR. VAR way of definition the variables, and again, this is the way how you communicate. We say to the compiler, please give the type for the corresponding variable that should be the same as the type of the value we provide to it. Yeah, so really simple, and if there is nothing we provide on the right side, then we cannot use VAR, because in this case, compiler simply does not understand what do you want from it, what type of the variable you expect. Yeah, again, since C# is statically typed, yeah, so it cannot have. So in some programming languages there are such data types like any. Yeah, so it means that it can be used any type or data or something similar. Actually, in C# there is the variable type object, and in fact, as you've also seen before, you can use the variable type object and then assign any value to this variable. It will be correct. Since the object is the parent class for all the data types, all the classes in C#. That's why if you want to have, like, let's say, variable type which can be used everywhere in all the cases, then you can use object. VAR itself is not the variable type. It's just simply the shorter syntax how we can, and maybe also easier syntax, easier way for us to write the type of the variable. So just for the, it's only for the developing point of for the developers to make it easier to write the code. Yeah. Instead of this, if you use the variable type, that will be the same. Yeah. But again, this is not. Remember, this does not work as object. So it actually means that if you use object, then you cannot call, like, let's say you have string, and if you have the class, if you define the variable object here instead of using var, then you cannot call the methods which are specific for strings. Yeah, you can only call the methods which belong to the object class. Yeah, but if you use var, it simply understands, the program does understand that you mean that you work with string variable, and then it will have all the necessary properties that the string class has. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the difference between var and object. var, it's simply the same, again, simply the same as if you provide the data type, but just shorter way of definition. Yeah, so you can check the .NET Framework type system. Yeah, we have this two major split between reference types and value types. Again, all the types come from the object class. Yeah, so this is the base, and this is, I would say, the main difference between C# and Java, because in Java there are strict separation between object types, reference types, and the primitive types, value types. In C#, all of them are located under the object class. So in fact, in C#, all the types are the classes, comparing to Java, where the value types are not the classes. So yeah, we have this major split, I would say. Then it also makes some differences in coding we already talked about, and we will talk about them also in the object-oriented programming topic. Yeah, so data type, value type, reference type, and also the pointers. Pointers is, I'll say, maybe not what we usually talk about in C#. That's mostly about C++.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
From your experience, yes, I've learned a little bit about pointers, but in practice, are they really often used, these pointers, and where
Uh,
they in
I-
practice?
yeah, actually, in C#, I won't really say that they use so often. They mostly are used in C++. In C++, they are definitely used. So actually, yeah, actually, also in .NET Framework, you may, and not only in .NET Framework, also maybe in Android application. I guess almost in all the possible frameworks, you may have the option to develop in C++, and in C++, the pointers are widely used. Yeah, so that's mostly about C++. In
Oh,
other,
yes, I
yeah,
understood this is the same only in C++, but
yeah.
nowhere else in the practice.
There are some languages where the pointers are relevant. They're mostly like custom languages. Maybe not one of the most popular. What we have, like again, C, Sharp, Java, PHP, JavaScript, or whatever, something similar. But there are a few languages which widely use pointers, and in such languages, pointers are quite 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 popular. For example, also in C Sharp. So I'm not sure if you used it tried in your course, but in our course, what we had in summer, we gone through the variables, sorry, method parameters which are passed by reference. And when you pass by reference, this is quite simple, quite similar that we can call it as the usage of pointers. So if you when you pass by reference, then you in some cases, yeah, we can say that.
You're like pointing to it, but not using straight it, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but actually the pointers are, I would say, in my experience, maybe I didn't work with C++ a lot. I worked a little bit, and I used the pointers there. But I worked, like also currently work with one programming language called SAP Advanced Business Application Programming, and this is actually the language where there is the mix of I would say all the possible languages from the world, and pointers are used there as well. And in my particular experience, the pointers are mostly used with the data types which are maybe there are not defined 100% or they are unclear. For example, I'll say from my experience how this could work. That's how this can work. Actually, let's say that we work with the framework uh, which has the classes, multiple different classes, but they are not related with one exact type of connection. Like again, in object-oriented, right, we can use the super classes, we can use the super classes, we can use the interfaces. Yeah, we can use the super class, and we can also use the interfaces. And so in this case, we develop the connection in between the classes. Yeah, like we have one parent class, then we can have some subclasses. Then, of course, we can unify them in the parent class, and then use the casting and call the common methods from this parent class. But let's say we may have the example when actually the type of the class, let's say we have multiple classes, multiple objects, and they are not related with the parent class. Yeah, so again, this may be the bad, and I would agree that this would be the bad design of the framework, bad design of the program, but such cases are possible. Yeah, and I would say, at least in my experience, in the programming language I work, the only way to be able to unify these classes to, I mean, what I know that we have, let's say again, 10 different classes, but what I know that they're not related with the parent class, but they all have the same methods, yeah, the same methods or the same attributes. And actually, let's say that I need to create the method or the logic which actually processes all these 10 classes as one. Yeah, so again, in theory, I can create 10 different methods for all these 10 different classes, but again, it's not efficient for me since I need to write 10 logic at the same time. Sorry, 10 logic. So mixing it up. I need to write the same logic 10 times, which actually do the same things. Yeah, so in let's say in 10 classes, all these 10 classes, I have the same method, which has the same definition, but these classes are not related with the parent class or the interface. So what do I need to do in such case? In such case, I need to actually, yeah, basically what can we do in such case? And like if we don't use the pointers, then the only solution would be that we write the same logic 10 times. Yeah, one logic for one method, one logic for another method, despite the fact that all these 10 times I need to call the same the methods in the same way. So I basically repeat the same logic 10 times. But if I have the pointers, so if you know the syntax of pointers and if you know how to use them, then using the pointers you can achieve that you access the attributes and the methods dynamically. Yeah, you can access these methods dynamically, so you can write the code which uses the pointers, and and then simply pass all these objects to this particular pointer, and then call the methods. Call this one method from. I mean, you can define one definition, and then use this definition with multiple objects. But again, this may be a little bit complicated. The key thing is that you can actually make the logic as dynamic as possible. Yeah, without the rules of object-oriented programming, without the rules of the parent classes, interfaces, and so on, you can develop the logic which is acceptable for multiple different types which are not related with each other. Yeah, in such cases, the pointers can be used. But I would say, yeah, this is more dynamic programming. Yeah, so.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, they are not very often used in normally structured programming.
Yeah. If the program is structured, if the framework is well developed, then it's fine. And yeah, especially nowadays, I would say that all the modern frameworks are quite well structured, and then fine. But sometimes, again, we all live in a modern world. But so I mean, I guess you understand that some frameworks may use the logic which comes from maybe even the previous century. Yeah. So and yeah, it can be used. It still can be relevant, but it may use some old-fashioned designs, and of course we need to handle these designs in some way. And yeah, pointers may be used for such designs. But again, yeah, if the program, it's absolutely correct that the program is well structured, then and the framework is pretty relevant, pretty modern, then that should be fine.
Okay, thank you for comments.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, maybe if we have time, then maybe I will prepare some more information about pointers, since to be honest, I like them. I like using them, since yeah, it's quite. I would say it's quite funny experience. It's a little bit crazy experience, but it's also quite a funny experience since you make the code really dynamic. Sometimes maybe it's not really safe, but it's quite interesting. But okay, then let's move on. Yeah, the value types quite similar. Boolean numeric characters, we talked about them. They all have different range. and of course different size. If you use heavier integer, not integer, heavier data type, then of course it will take more space in your memory. Yeah, so we use the floating decimal, the floating numbers. So these are numbers with the decimal. So after dot, also can be different, can be float and double. So yeah, one more point is the structures we did not really talk about before. Yes, so maybe a short. So the structures actually, I would simply say that that would be the type. So let's say we have the structure full name. Yeah, so then it may have the string name and then also the string surname. Yeah, so something that that has multiple components. Yeah, so then I can say full name, my name. Yeah, so full name, my name, and so then I can assign the values. Of course I can get. Sorry, hold on. Yeah, we can use. Hold on, we getters and setters. How do I? So what's the point? Hold on. Hold on. What did I miss? Sorry. Yeah. Hold on. I forgot one. To define as public. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Of course, the principles of the access modifiers also work here. So if you want to access the corresponding attribute from outside the structure, then you need to define this particular component as public. Yeah, from my point of view, it doesn't really. It's for structures. It's not really needed, but yeah. So then please make sure you define. Yeah, and then let's say define name surname from here. My full name. Okay, what would be my name then? The surname, last name. And so I define name and surname inside. I assign the values to the corresponding components of the structure. Yeah. So basically, structures are they are normally considered as the data type. Yeah, the data type which simply has multiple components. So let's say, for example, the full name, which makes sense that full name has name, surname. Yeah, so also I would say you can define the table line. Yeah, so let's say you have the table with some fields, let's say ID, name, surname, date of birth, and so on, and then such type of the table line can also be the type of the structure. So again, what you may ask, what's the difference between the structure and the object? They have similar properties, but for the structure, that's the value type, so you don't need to create an object. And you can see here we don't create any object. We do not use the operator new. Yeah, so you just simply use the value. The value type here. Okay. So do you have any questions about structure? Okay, so if not, then let's move on. Yeah, enums, so they are similar to constants. Yeah, so the idea is that we define the constants and then we assign the values to these constants. Yeah, for example, I want to define the mapping between the colors and the corresponding values of these colors. Yeah, so then I can use enums and then maybe shape is not the best one, I would say color. So in this case, we assign the names. We assign the values to the names of the color. So then I can define a new color. So it will be say my color or something similar, and then I can assign the value. So I use num color and that will be blue. So quite simple. So quite similar to what we have when we use the mapping, the map collections, but so it's more here we have more generic way. We have the value types, so we simply map the values to the names, and then we can use these names. It is quite a comfortable way. If we like so to use them as the constants. Again, why we use the constants? We use the constants to escape the cases when we need to, like, we want to change the value of one constant and then we need to actually review all the code. We need to change all the code, and yeah, so then of course it's not quite comfortable if we, and not quite safe if we, and it's also quite time consuming when we want to refactor and change the whole code. On the other hand, if we use the constant, if we use the simple name, that we can simply change the value of the constant, and then that would be enough. So same as here. Let's say if I want to define that blue is not 20, again, let's say that I use this enum not only in this class, but also I create another class, I use it there, then I can create some more classes, say maybe in other projects then, and then I can still use this enum, yeah? And again, if I use it in, say, tens of different places, then I don't want to change the value 20 everywhere. I can simply change it here, and then it will be applied to all the places where color is, where this enum is used. Okay. So, do you have any questions? Okay, so good. And yeah, nullable type simply means that the value does not have, the variable does not have any value. It does not have the value 0. Pardon. 0, -1, 1, or whatever you want. It does not have any value. This one we call it null. When it is needed in some solutions, also in some frameworks where, let's say, again, there may be the value and the value which is not provided like n, as I said last time I provided the example. It can be the age, yeah, like you have the user interface, and let's say that some users do not want to provide the age, and then instead they can skip providing it. And then you want to store this value in some way, and then you can store it as null. So it means that the value is not provided. You do not need to store it as 0, since it won't be correct. Okay, in some cases you can do it in the way that you store it as -1, for example. You store the value, which may not be relevant, but this is not the best way. Maybe the most understandable way is that you store it as null, simply means that it's not value not provided. Yeah, the reference data types. So it means that the key point here is that for each variable and also the attribute where the corresponding objects are stored, they are stored as the reference. Yeah, so that means that the variables store the reference, yeah, the address to the memory, not the address of the memory, not the actual values. Yeah? So this is what we checked already today with the Zodiac's. Yeah, so remember that when we checked Zodiac's objects, then actually the references were compared, not the values of the objects. Yeah? So this is the key point for the reference data types. The data type itself it stores the reference to the variable. Oh yeah, sorry, it stores the reference to the object, which is then stored in the memory, and then it has all the necessary values and the attributes. Okay, so yeah, the definition for the variable, that would be simple, and then for the objects, we need to create new objects. The strings are also the object, but so we have these so-called, let's say maybe not really constants, but these, yeah, in this case, we actually also create a new object, which then stores these 5 characters. But you will see that today we'll talk about the arrays, and yeah, so basically the strings are stored as the arrays of the characters. So in this case, we simply hard code the array with 5 elements, with 5 characters, these characters. All right, and then this is actually the object. And so now the declaration simply points to the corresponding position of the memory, and then the reference data types points to the position of the memory where the object is located. The constants also, yeah, quite similar what we just currently done with the nums, yeah, but constants cannot be used as separate data type. They're just simply defined as the values, and again, they are most used for the readability of the code and also for the ability to then change this constant value, which then can be applied in multiple places in the code. Okay, so do you have any questions so far? Okay, then scope of variable, place for the variables, the scope of visibility of the variable. Remember that we can access all the outer, like if we are located inside one block, then we can access all the variables which are located in the outer. Yeah, we can in the outer block, yeah, we can access all the outer variables, but we cannot access the inner variables. Okay, so means that from here we cannot access these variables. And also, yeah, the obvious point is that if we define the variable below, then it cannot be accessed above. Yeah, so that also, I mean, in the same section. Yeah, it also makes sense, right? And yeah, it also makes sense since it's like since the code is executed from top to down, and means that the decoration, actually the decoration is not the executable part of code, but it is still the part of code which follows the sequence of the execution. Yeah, and again the sequence goes from up to down. Okay. Yeah, and then we can also define a different way. the member variables would be the variables which are defined directly. I usually call them global variables. They can be defined. They can be called as member variables. I prefer global variables. Yeah, so it means that global variable is located inside. It is defined as a part of the class, and when we define some variables locally inside the methods, then we call them local variables. But again, to be honest, in this case, the namings and the terms can be different, and so someone may call them the member variables. I maybe prefer them to call them as global variables, but it's maybe different in different environments, so don't be confused. But the principle is the same. Boxing and boxing. Yeah, so in this particular case means that the type object is used, so then you can hide something inside the object, and then you can unhide this particular value from object and then cast it and use it afterwards. Generic data type. So this is what the next your next task will be related to. And so these will be used in your next task. So it means that these are the types, generic types, which help us to escape some to actually make our life easier during the compilation. Yeah, so we define some characteristics of the type, and then this type can actually be different for different objects. Yeah, so like in this case, we define the type T, but in this case, we see that for one object it is integer, and for another object it is string. Yeah? So in this case, again, it's just simple NT type. Don't have any parameters, but most of generics, and as you may already know, could already notice, is that generic types are mostly used for the collections, for the collection types, and then using the generic type, we can define what kind of the values we expect to be placed inside the collection as the object. And so we have the collection of strings, and the type would be string collection of integers, the type would be int, and so on. And based on this type, we can simply then follow our code, and then the compile. If we use not the type we define on the definition, then the compiler will notify us and say that we are not doing the things correctly. And also, as I showed you last time, we can provide some additional parameters to the T class. Yeah, so we can write where and then say that T should have some parameters, like it should extend one interface. It should implement one particular interface, or it should extend one particular class, or something similar. So we can also apply some characteristics to this type. So then we can, let's say again, if it, as last time I showed you, it can be defined in the way that T implements comparable, then inside the code. So when this type T is used, then all the variables which has this type T, they can be compared. Yeah, from them we can use the method equals. We can use the method compare, and then we can implement the comparison. So this is about generics, but we'll work with them later as well. Then the operators and assignments, so quite. Yeah. So I also a little bit confused. Yeah. So why do we? Okay. Also it means that just simply system is not defined. Yeah. So I'm sometimes a little confused since yeah. So system is mostly used in Java. That's why. And yeah, to be honest, these materials are quite similar what you may face in Java courses, since the approaches used in both languages are similar. So sometimes I also a little bit confused where it is. Now, of course, yeah, that's C#. Yeah, so then the operators can be, yeah, I guess you are all familiar with these operators: plus, minus, decrement by 1, increment by 1. And so division, modulo, multiplication, they should all be clear. We can concatenate strings, and the characters also quite clear, I would say. So just in case you have any questions, you can ask. Relational operators, they return true or false. We can compare the values. Yeah, can compare the values, but remember that for the reference data types, less than or equal, greater than or equal, we cannot use them. Yeah, for the reference data, since for the reference data types, these operators may not make sense. But for the reference operators, we can only use equals and not equals to. But then these would compare the references with one exception. The exception would be the string type. Yeah, this is I would say maybe one of the most interesting exceptions in C#, because for the strings it is implemented, C# generically implemented in the way that equals actually does not compare the references for strings, it compares the texts, yeah. It compares the values. But yeah, so for the strings, you can also call the method equals, and then it will return the same results. Yeah, so this makes sense. I would say, if you have any questions, you can ask. Yeah, so conditional statements, conditional operators. So you have the expression. Expression should return. Expression returns true or false. Then, if true, then one value is returned. Else, another value is returned. Yeah, so we can use it for the assignment, and then ask the question. So if month 1, if true, then January. Else, we check other cases. So then there can be some logical operators, byte-wise. Maybe we'll skip them. Logical, not logical, and logical or are quite widely popular. Yeah, so just simply they are used with the values true or false, and then we can apply them to the Boolean values. Yeah. So again, logical not will return the opposite. For true, that will be false, and for false, that will be true. And checks if one of, checks if both are true. Otherwise, the result will be false. Yeah. So basically, again, these operators, they take the Boolean value and also return the Boolean value. Yeah, so in this case, it takes one Boolean value and returns the opposite value. And here we apply AND in between two Boolean values, and then we can check for AND. Again, if both sides are true, then the result will be true. Otherwise, the result will be false. For OR, one of the sides should be true, then the returning result will also be true. We can actually check how the table looks like for the byte-wise operators as well. So we can use them inside the code. Assignment operators, yeah, so simply can assign. Yeah, so for the values, remember for the value types, it will directly pass the values. For the reference types, it will pass the reference, not the particular values. Yeah. So remember, one object is passed the variable, then the reference of the object will be passed. It still remains the same object, even if you move it from one variable to another variable like 10 times, it will still at the end be the same object. So yeah, but for the value types, and then the values are passed. Yeah, addition, subtraction, you all I guess know these operators, so we can maybe skip them again. Yeah, you can check all the different types. For the value type, we will talk about the reference data types casting code, but later in our course. For the value types, the casting works the simple way that in case the casting makes sense and cannot provide any data loss, then we do not need to provide a casting operator. Like let's say if you cast integer to double, then of course you will not have any data loss since you cast a smaller, I mean the variable with the smaller range to the variable with the wider range, and of course in such case you don't need to do the casting operation. However, if you go from the more advanced type to more simple type, then you need to use this casting operation. So, and the program flow, remember that we can use branching, so we can use ifs, else, ifs, and else. And so that we can use only, we can have the cases when we use only ifs, so this is up to you. So if is mandatory, else if and else are optional. Yeah, so you can have the statement where you have only if, but you cannot have the statement where you have only else if or else statement, which also makes sense, right? The sequence should also be the same. So first of all, you should have one if statement, then you should have like you may have the else if statements, as many as you want, and at the end you can have one else statement. Yeah. So the idea again, if change the first condition, then else ifs check the other condition, and then else simply is executed if none of the conditions above are fulfilled. And yeah, so remember again what I said here at the beginning of this session today, that if one of the, like again, we go from top to down, and if one of the ifs or else ifs are, if the conditions are fulfilled, if the condition is true, then it will not check the else if statements below, and it will not execute else statement as well. So in this case, again, you can manage the flow of your program. Switch, yeah, you have the value, then you check the value, and then you provide the possible values for this particular variable, and then the values are then compared, and then based on the value which matches the switch value here, the corresponding statement to be executed, and then you use break to then say that the execution of the switch statement is over. Sometimes you can also use go to, but as we discussed last time, it's better to not do it since it's, yeah. So again, this is also quite similar to what we just talked about the pointers. For go to, it also may be implemented in the wrong design where we cannot really where we don't have the correct pattern, where we don't have the well-designed pattern. So in this case, when we have goto, it means that something is wrong with the program, since it basically jumps through the program, ignoring the main principles of the programming. Yeah, so that's the point. That's why we don't use it. Yeah. So while is so familiar with while, quite popular loop, quite simple loop. We have one condition. If while condition is true, then the statements inside this condition are executed. Do while means similar, but with one exception. For do while, at least the first loop will always be executed. Then for the further loops, it will check the condition. And so we mostly use while, but sometimes if you want, you can also use do while. Why not? For it's say more maybe old style, but also why not? So used also mostly for iterations through the like, let's say, counting, and the counting may start from any value and then goes like step by step up. But in fact, you can start from whatever you want and then count up, down. You can define the steps. So most usually you have the step 1, yeah, so increment by 1. You can also multiply by multiplicator. You can change the step, say to make it step 2, step 3, as you want. So just you can define any incrementing and decrementing operation here. Yeah, for each needed for the collections and also for the arrays. Yeah, so go through the elements of the arrays and then get them and then use them inside the statements. Break simply means that we break the loop and simply stop the execution of the loop and go outside. Continue, go to the next iteration, go to labels again. I said maybe let's skip this and not use it. Return means that you simply finish the execution of the statement. Simply finish the execution of this. Oh, sorry, not the statement, but the method, and then return it. Yeah, so as I said, please be careful when you use it. Because not be careful, but please understand how to use it. And then remember that if return statement is executed, then the program will not, the corresponding method will not continue its execution. Okay. So, and yeah, so regarding the return statement, sometimes it may be really useful to use it, especially, so sometimes, let's say that you have, for example, so that would be a really interesting point. You have the if statement. Let's say that you have the if statement, one condition, and then you have the statement which has lots of lines of code, for example, and then it finishes at the end of the method. Yeah. So let's say that you practically have if statement which is placed like in the size of the method. So it's, let's say, it almost starts at the beginning and finishes at the end. So instead of writing such long statements, you can use You can use the opposite thing. You can say, like, you can make this if statement smaller. You can actually apply the opposite statement, so you can simply add not operator and then write the statement return. So instead of placing the large code inside if, you can use sometimes you can use the opposite opposite condition and then call the call the call the statement return. All right, yeah, but that would be just such saying not really trick, but quite useful thing to use. Yeah, instead of writing large if statements, because they sometimes may be quite, let's say, not really flexible and maybe a little bit hard to maintain them. Okay, so again, we just remembered all the key points what we use in C#. So do you have any questions? Okay, then maybe again let's have 10 minutes break, 8 minutes break, and then we will quickly go through the arrays. Okay, so let's meet in 8 minutes. So I think so if everyone is here, I think we can continue. So and yeah, I hope everyone's here. If not, then let me know. So yeah, how can you let me know if you're not here? Okay, then let's maybe wait 10 more seconds and then yeah, so okay, let's start. So what's the point? The point here is that we will talk about the arrays, and so just for you to remind what the arrays are, I hope you all are familiar with them pretty much. So this sharing won't be long. So yes, what the arrays are. So the arrays, and the array is the data structure, and the way how the data can be stored. They have it's one object which has the sequence of the multiple, which has the sequence of the elements, which have the same type, same data type. Yeah, which I would say maybe not really, that won't be correct, same data type, but at least yeah, the same data type or the same parent class, which is defined as the type of the array, because you can define the array as object, like the array of objects, and then you can simply store all the possible values inside. So that is, we need to be a little bit careful, but yeah, so we can define the array with one particular type, and then it means that all the elements of this array, they should all have the same they should all have this data type defined. Yeah, they can be one-dimensional or multi-dimensional. So the same as for the, how in math we have this x, y axis. Yeah, so it means that then we can draw the graph. We can have the negative value. Yeah, in that case we can have negative values, but let's say that we only have the positive values. So we have this xy axis with the only positive or zero values, and then that means that if we have one-dimensional array, this will be the x-axis, and then we can mark the value. Then we can follow simply the sequence there. If we have the two-dimensional array, then we have xy axis, yeah, and so let's only say that we have positions at only integer values, like at point 00, point 01, point 10. Yeah, so the same as we can describe it in xy axis graph. Yeah, so the same as with the array. And if we have three-dimensional arrays, then we have like 3 dimensions. That means we have, let's say, x axis, y axis, and z axis. Yeah, and so on. Yeah, we can have even more and more dimensions. Yeah, but the thing is that for each particular dimension we have, for each particular element of the first dimension, we have the array defined in the second dimension, and so on. And the same is for each element, even also for the second dimension array. Yeah, but again, mostly we use some one-dimensional arrays, multi-dimensional arrays. So let's say two-dimensional arrays can be used to describe the matrices. Also, let's say describe to sell the tickets in cinema, theater, opera, and so on. Yeah, so we have the rows, and we have the so we have in cinema. Let's say we have the rows of seats, and then each row has has the seeds, something be from 1 to any number, or also the number of the seeds in each row can be different. Yeah? So that is also the property which can be applied to two-dimensional arrays. And then to access the corresponding seed, we provide the row of the seed, and then we provide the sequential position of the seed. And then this is where the two-dimensional arrays can be used. Three-dimensional arrays. So what can we really imagine from real life? For example, you build something here, so you have them like the coordinates, you have the length, you have the width, and you also have the height. So that can also be possible. And then you just point out the location. You can use the three-dimensional arrays in such case. To define, we need to provide the type. So that would be this way. Yeah, so that would be the type with the square brackets, and then name of the variable, the name, and then the yeah, in this case you don't need the brackets. Yeah, and then to declare a new array, you need to then create it as the object. You need to create the object of the array, and then you need to provide the type, and then you also need to provide the number of the elements in the array. So the property for the array is that they are not resizable. So again, remember, the arrays are the reference data type, so it simply means that the the variable where the arrays are stored, it does not store the values assigned to the array. It stores the reference of this array. Yeah, so it simply means that it stores the address of the memory, address to the memory, where the array is declared, and then we can access to this memory, and then can access the corresponding element of the array when we have the address to this memory. Yeah. So that we cannot resize it since the object is created. Yeah, so the object is created, we cannot change the properties of this object. What we can do, the only thing what we can do is that we can create a new object then. Yeah. So this is how you define the arrays. And if it's just simply the same as for all the reference data types, if you do not create the object, then the initial value would be null. Yeah. The initial value would be null. So yeah, this is what I said. We'll create the array, it points to the memory, and then it points to it points to the starting point of the array. Yeah, it points to the actually the first element. Yeah, so that's why the array starts with 0, as I said, because initially it points to the first one, and then it simply says, if we say 0, it means that we do not move further. We are on the current position, and then we can access the first element. Then if we access the element number 1, so then it means that we move one position, and then we actually now point to the second element. Actually, we point to this particular position, which will be the second element, and so on. You can access the element of the array using square brackets and the corresponding index. Yeah, which makes sense. You can change the value the same way as you get the value. So this is finished. Further, do you have any questions about creation of declaration? Okay. So value assignments, you can assign the values directly on the initialization, and you can also assign the values separately for each particular element. Okay. So this string was working. For multi-dimensional arrays, you need to provide comma, which simply means that you are using multiple dimensions. And then to create the object, you need to provide the number of dimensions for the first, number of the elements for the first dimension, and then the number of the elements for the second dimension. It can be provided. You can also skip providing this, and then there is such possibility. Like, let's create a small example here. So you define two-dimensional. Hold on. Sorry. What's this? Moment. Oh, sorry. My fault. Yeah, I usually mix them. Yeah, so of course need to place the brackets at the beginning. Yeah, so now everything's fine. Yeah, also, so also then fix the presentation. Okay. Just sometimes I'm mixing the positions. But in other languages, these will be equivalent approaches when you can place the brackets after the data type, and you can also, in some languages, you can also type the brackets after the name of the variable. Yeah. So in some languages there are no differences. In C# you must place them to the data type. So yeah, then in such cases it means that you have 4 rows and 4 columns, for example, and then I can also have the case where I do not provide the number of the values, number of the dimensions. So what is limits? Moment. I'm usually confused at this point. One moment. Okay, I guess. Yeah, we normally need to then provide the multiple dimensions there. But, sorry. That's yeah, a little bit confused. Yeah, we need to provide multiple dimensions. Always in such case, yeah. So that would be necessary. Then there may be such cases where you don't define, but then you define the values separately. So in such case, it simply means that it has no values and no dimensions. So in theory, you can define the values inside, and So it means that, let's say you have values something like this, and then you have another element which then should also have then 3 elements. Yeah, so in this case, we define, so in this way we define the two-dimensional array which has one row and one row, sorry, not one row, it has 2 rows and 3 columns. Yeah, so yeah, in fact you cannot you cannot proceed in the way that the first row has 3 columns and the second row has 2 columns. Yeah, you should have the same number of columns in all the dimensions. Yeah, so this is about multi-dimensional arrays. Maybe we will not use them so often, just for your information, but in case we need them, we can use them, of course. Then that's what this is. Maybe we can skip this. I'm sorry. Yeah, so basically this is the same as white, and maybe we can look at this. Yeah, so the boundaries, please note that the array starts at 0, not at 1. This is what I just described. You can use the loops to access each element, so you can simply access them one by one. This is up to you. For sizing, as I said, you need to create new object. You can use the same variable, yeah, since this is the reference data type. It means that you can create any possible object you want, yeah, but then this will be different object. Yeah? So the variable may remain the same, but then the object will be different. So yeah, then to resize, we need to create new object. To copy the elements, yeah, so like you want to copy the elements from one object to another, then you need to use the method copy, and this will copy the elements from the source array into the target array, and then you can also provide the position starting which from where position you want to copy, and from the source array to which position. Yeah. So how many elements you want to copy. Yeah. And also then you define the position of the target array where you want to copy the particular elements. Right. So I would say for the arrays that would be it. Will definitely use them in our practical tasks. But do you have any questions? No. Okay, so if there are no questions, then it's your turn. Now you can move to the activity 2. So you can move to activity 2. Again, not until the end of today. No. So you can start now, and then I guess we can. So if you manage, then you can finish this activity until Wednesday, but we will do it then together also at the beginning of the next session on Wednesday. So for now, please take a look on the exercise, and so you have time now. You can start doing it. But again, no rush, no hurry today. So just take a look on the exercise, let me know if there is anything not clear, and then you can start working on it, and then we'll finish it on Wednesday at the beginning of the session. Yeah, so please take a look. This is yeah, so maybe just for you to know which one is it. So that is activity. So I'll type it in chat. So that would be this one. Yeah, so maybe let's go through the instructions together. So to create a new solution. Yeah, so previously we had solution activity 1, so here we have activity 2. The same way also delete the class, generic class generated there, and instead add these two existing classes from this code files. Yeah, so the same folder you've seen before. Here we have array base and array stack classes. So copy them to the project. And yeah, so if you're already familiar, you can check them. What are the structure of these classes, and then follow the structure there. So you need to yeah, maybe let me then start together with you. Then let's create the project. In this case, yeah, it says that we can integrate class library. So let's then do it. We name it activity 2. Activity 2. Then let's go to the to the backup class. And here we'll create a new solution. Let's see, I can use .NET 5. That should not be the problem, I think. And yeah, so as I said, let's delete it and let's paste the two files we have here. The array base and array stack. Yeah, so and under each task you under each class you have the instructions. Yeah, so you can see what needs to be done. You can simply scroll down and see the instructions that you see to do, and it means that it says you need to initialize the array and a whole number of items. Okay. So if the value is legal, then use default size instead. So you know, maybe I start the activity today, and then I will also give you the time you can finish it then on Wednesday as well. Maybe at the end of the session on Wednesday. Yeah, so then you can do it, complete it individually, and then submit it, let's say, maybe at the end of the week. So on Saturday, for example, or maybe I'd say at the end of the week. Yeah. So that would be fine. Yeah. So just for you to not rush, so you can easily, so you can complete it individually. Yeah. So maybe I will write it under the practical tasks. So until the end the week. So basically until the next Monday, it will be. I'll give you more tasks, so this week we'll have more tasks. So you will have enough tasks to do until the end of lockdown. Until the end of lockdown. All right, then follow the requirements here. Now to do activity 2.2. So search for the current contents of the array and determine if there is any item in the array that is equal to prime. So basically check the tasks here and follow them. I guess that will be enough to do. So we have the time, we have the week ahead then to proceed. Okay, do you have any questions?
Arthur, I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
The first one is some request. Could you create one channel more and place here all lesson records, if it's possible?
All the recordings of the lessons, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I can. As you can see in the welcome and rules, I simply shared my channel, so you can. I basically store all the recordings on my channel.
Okay, it would be fine.
Yeah, so I mean, you can simply navigate to my channel and you'll have all the recordings here. So just to not copy paste these links every time, you can navigate to the channel and then all the recordings are here.
And one else, perhaps I missed something. This Saturday, it's a working day in Latvia.
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the beginning of this session, I will ask if you, I'll ask the question in chat if you will, if you can attend or not. Then please vote. If the majority will vote as, but maybe one thing, what we can do is the next week. So is Saturday next week fine for everyone? So maybe I will then ask this question in chat, since I just realized we will not have session. Not have session next Thursday, since it's 18th of November. Then I guess we'll have this time free starting at Wednesday. Then I guess, since next week the one session will be skipped because of the national holiday, then we can take the session on Saturday next week. If it's fine for you, then I will simply ask the question in chat, and then you can vote with thumbs up, thumbs down, and then simply, then we'll decide.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, then I guess I can ask this. I can finally ask this question. So. So this Saturday is 13. So next Saturday, that will be 20. So it's like the half wants it this week and the half wants it next week. Yeah, that's interesting. But so I hope. Okay, I see now it's 5. Okay, it's 6-2. Okay, so that's the one thing. Okay, maybe let's see the results until Wednesday, and I hope it won't be the problem if we decide it on Wednesday. Okay. So just in case you cannot wait until Wednesday, let me know the decision. But I guess next week, okay, I see the results next week, then should be fine. Yeah, remember we don't have the session on 18th of November. Obviously, then yeah, next week will be like more free for us, and then we can use this time. Okay, the whole thing goes crazy a little bit, yeah. So just let's go from one place to another. Okay, see, the majority is fine for next Saturday. So yeah, so in case you cannot really attend it next week, then please let me know. We will find some solution then. But yeah, then it's decided that we will not have the session this Saturday because some of you may work. And okay, it's 50-50. Yeah. Okay, but okay, then let's see if anyone votes. Anyone votes for this Saturday then. But again, I assume that some of you may work this Saturday. That's why there won't be even the theoretical possibility to attend the session. Then I guess okay. Then let's move it to next Saturday. Hope that would be fine for others. So since I understand that 13th is the working day for some of you, then
You vote as well. You can vote as well.
I mean, for me, it's absolutely up to you to decide because so both Saturdays are fine for me. But so maybe next Saturday is even better because we don't have the session on Thursday, and so to not have this large gap in between. Yeah, so otherwise we'll have the gap from Wednesday to Monday, and this is we'll go out of tonus. Yeah, we'll go out of our shape then. Okay, then I will vote for next Saturday. Yeah. Just to not have this large gap in between. Yeah, so okay, but yeah, so if it's not possible for you to attend, then let me maybe know then. Okay, and then do you have any more questions? Okay, then I think I can leave this task then up to you. Yeah, so any questions we can discuss then also on Wednesday and then Thursday as well. And then okay, then meet you all then on Wednesday. Have a nice evening, have a nice tomorrow, and then meet you on Wednesday. Okay? Bye.
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 Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.